The salvaged ship Kethvar moved through the debris field like a predator stalking through bones. Captain Zector's 4 eyes swept across the scanner readings, each pupil dilating independently as he processed the scattered remains of what had once been a thriving solar system. Another human world, his navigator Telman whispered through his breathing apparatus. The gas mixture that kept him alive hissed softly in the bridge's artificial atmosphere. The third one this cycle. Zector's mandibles clicked in what passed for agreement among his species. The hegemony's war against humanity had been swift, brutal, and thorough. In less than 2 standard years, they had reduced the human species from a population of 12 billion spread across 47 worlds to scattered debris fields and silent planets. The humans had fought back, of course. They always did. That was what made them so dangerous. "Captain," the sensor operator called out, his scaled hands dancing across the control surface. "I'm reading something unusual in Grid 77 Alpha." "Define unusual," Zector growled, his attention shifting to the tactical display. "Metal composition suggests it's human-made, but the energy signature is still active. Weak, but definitely there." Zector felt his secondary heart skip a beat. Active human technology was supposed to be impossible. The hegemony had used quantum disruptors in their final assault, weapons designed to permanently disable any human electronic systems. Nothing should have survived. "Could be a trap," Telman suggested, but his voice carried uncertainty. The humans were gone, everyone knew that. "Bring us closer," Zector ordered. "Full defensive posture." The Kethvar asterisk adjusted course, its sleek hull reflecting the dim light of the system's dying star. As they approached the coordinates, the object resolved on their main viewer. It was small, barely 30 meters long, and clearly damaged. Hull breaches marked its surface like battle scars, and one entire section had been torn away, exposing twisted metal and frozen atmosphere. "It's a human escape pod," the sensor operator reported, his voice filled with disbelief. "Modified for long-term habitation. Captain, the life support readings, there's someone alive in there." The bridge fell silent except for the ambient hum of the ship's systems. Zector stared at the battered craft floating in the void, his mind racing. A living human. The implications were staggering. "Impossible," Telman breathed. "The war ended 18 months ago. No one could survive that long in a pod that size." But the readings didn't lie. Deep within that damaged hull, something lived. Something that had somehow endured while its entire species was systematically exterminated. "Sir," the communications officer spoke up hesitantly, "I'm detecting a very weak transmission from the pod. It's on an old human frequency, a distress call." "Put it through." Static filled the bridge, punctuated by a rhythmic beeping. Then, cutting through the interference, came a voice. Human, male, steady despite the circumstances. "This is Commander Marcus Chen of the UES Defiance. If anyone receives this transmission, know that humanity remembers. We fought with honor. We loved our families. We reached for the stars not as conquerors, but as explorers. I am the last, but I am not forgotten." The transmission repeated, an endless loop that had been broadcasting into the void for who knew how long. Zector's claws extended involuntarily, a reflexive response to stress. During the war, he had personally witnessed the destruction of 3 human colonies. He had seen their ships burn, watched their cities fall from orbit. The humans fought like madmen, throwing themselves against impossible odds without hesitation. They had been magnificent enemies. "Orders, Captain?" Telman asked quietly. Zector studied the pod on his viewer. Protocol was clear. Any surviving humans were to be eliminated on sight. The Hegemony Council had been explicit about this. Humanity was too dangerous to be allowed even a single survivor. But something about that steady, defiant voice gave him pause. This human had floated alone in the dark for over a year, broadcasting a message that no one was supposed to hear. Not begging for rescue, not pleading for mercy, but simply stating facts with quiet dignity. "Bring it aboard," he said finally. Captain Telman's voice rose in alarm. "The protocols." "I know the protocols." Zector's voice carried the weight of command. "But I also know curiosity. This human has survived impossible odds. I want to know how." The Kethvar *S cargo bay extended mechanical arms toward the pod. As they made contact, additional sensors activated, providing detailed scans of the craft's interior. Life signs are stable but weak, the medical officer reported. The human appears to be in some form of suspended animation, though I've never seen readings quite like this. Artificial or natural? Unknown. The pod systems show extensive modifications, but they're unlike anything in our databases. As the pod was drawn into the cargo bay, Zector found himself remembering the last human world he had helped destroy. The civilians there had known they were doomed, but they had kept working until the very end. Children in schools, farmers in fields, scientists in laboratories, all continuing their lives as if they believed tomorrow would come. Perhaps that was what made humans so dangerous. They never truly accepted defeat. Atmospheric containment is secure, his operations chief reported. The pod is safely aboard. I want a full analysis of its systems, Zector ordered, and prepare a medical bay for our guest. Are you certain about this, Captain? Tellman asked privately over their direct comm channel. The Council's orders were quite specific. Zector watched as his crew began their work around the human pod. The war is over, old friend. Humanity is extinct. What harm can one dying human possibly do? But even as he said the words, Zector felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate controls. During the war, he had learned never to underestimate humanity's capacity for survival. They were a species that thrived in impossible circumstances. And now he had brought the last of them aboard his ship. The pod's hatch hissed as it began to open, revealing the human within. Commander Marcus Chen lay in a cocoon of life support systems, his breathing steady, his eyes closed. But even unconscious, there was something about him that commanded attention. He wore the remains of a military uniform, and his hands bore the calluses of someone accustomed to hard work. Remarkable, the medical officer whispered. His cellular structure shows signs of extensive modification. This human has been engineered for long-term survival. Engineered how? I'm not certain. The modifications are subtle but comprehensive. Enhanced metabolism, improved radiation resistance, modified sleep cycles. It's as if someone prepared him for an extended journey. Zector stepped closer to the pod, studying the sleeping human. Marcus Chen looked younger than his service record would suggest, but there was a weathered quality to his features that spoke of hardship endured. Captain, the sensor operator called out, I'm reading something unusual. The pod's computer core is still active, and it's massive, far larger than anything that should fit in a craft this size. What kind of data? I can't access it directly, but the storage capacity appears to be several thousand times larger than standard human technology should allow. Zector felt his unease growing. Nothing about this situation made sense. A surviving human was impossible enough, but one equipped with technology that exceeded known human capabilities. Sir, the communications officer spoke up again. The distress signal has changed. How? It's no longer a loop. The message is responding to our presence. A new voice filled the bridge, the same steady tone but with different words. Greetings to the hegemony vessel Kethvar*. I am Commander Marcus Chen. I have been waiting for you. The bridge erupted in alarm as crew members reached for weapons and began emergency procedures. But Zector held up a hand for silence, his eyes never leaving the human in the pod. Waiting for us, he said aloud. The response came immediately. Yes, Captain Zector, we have much to discuss. Tellman's breathing apparatus hissed faster as his stress levels spiked. How does it know your name? But Zector was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. This was no random survivor, no lucky escape from humanity's destruction. This human had been placed here deliberately, waiting in the void with the patience of a spider in its web. Computer, he called to his ship's AI, scan for any unauthorized transmissions from our vessel. Negative, Captain. All communications are within normal parameters. Then how does it? Because, came Marcus Chen's voice, calm and measured, I have been listening to your ship's communications for the past 4 days. Your hull resonance patterns, your crew's biosignatures, even your personal command codes. I know everything about you, Captain Zector. The human's eyes opened for the first time, revealing a gaze that was entirely too alert for someone who had supposedly been in suspended animation. He smiled, and there was something predatory in the expression. Welcome to the endgame. Marcus Chen sat up in the pod with the fluid grace of someone who had been awake for hours rather than years. The life support systems that had supposedly sustained him in suspended animation detached themselves with mechanical precision, revealing that they were far more sophisticated than any hegemony technology. Captain Zector's hand hovered over the emergency containment controls. One command would flood the cargo bay with plasma, instantly incinerating the human and his mysterious pod. But something held him back, perhaps the same curiosity that had driven his species to the stars, or perhaps the growing certainty that this situation was far more complex than it appeared. "You're making a mistake if you're thinking about the plasma grid," Marcus said conversationally, swinging his legs over the edge of the pod. "Your ship's systems are more interconnected than you realize." "Impossible," Tellman snarled. "Human technology is incompatible with ours. You couldn't possibly have accessed our networks." Marcus smiled and gestured to the pod behind him. "You're thinking too small. This isn't just human technology anymore." He stood, and Zector was surprised by his size. The files had described humans as being roughly equivalent to hegemony species in physical dimensions, but Marcus seemed larger somehow, more substantial. His movements carried the controlled precision of a predator, and his eyes held an intelligence that made the captain's scales itch with unease. "Let me tell you a story," Marcus said, walking calmly to the cargo bay's viewport and gazing out at the debris field. "Once upon a time, there was a species that thought they were the apex predators of the galaxy. They had superior technology, overwhelming numbers, and a military doctrine that had never failed them. The war is over," Zector growled through the comm system. "Your species is extinct." "Is it?" Marcus turned back to face the camera he somehow knew was watching him. "Are you certain about that?" He pressed his hand against the viewport, and something impossible happened. The reinforced transparent aluminum began to shift and flow like liquid, forming a perfect handprint. But more than that, Zector could see microscopic tendrils extending from Marcus's palm into the ship's hull itself. "You see, Captain, humanity learned something very interesting in our final days. When you're facing extinction, when every conventional weapon and strategy has failed, you begin to think differently. You begin to ask questions that no rational being would ever consider." The tendrils spread further into the ship's structure, and suddenly the lights on the bridge dimmed. Not an emergency condition, but a subtle demonstration of capability. Questions like, what if consciousness isn't limited to biological forms? What if intelligence can be transmitted, stored, duplicated? What if death isn't actually the end? Zector felt his blood temperature dropping. "Impossible. We monitored all human research facilities. We destroyed their quantum laboratories, their AI development centers." "You destroyed the facilities you knew about," Marcus corrected gently. "But humanity has always been good at keeping secrets, especially when survival depends on it." The view of the debris field outside began to change. What had appeared to be random wreckage started moving with purpose, larger pieces rotating to reveal hidden surfaces, smaller fragments forming complex geometric patterns. "Tell me, Captain," Marcus continued, his voice now coming from the ship's internal communication system rather than the cargo bay. "What do you think you're looking at out there?" Zector's sensor operator was frantically running scans, his scales flushed with stress. "Sir, the debris—" "It's not debris. These are functional components. The entire field is some kind of distributed system." "Distributed intelligence," Marcus confirmed. "Every piece of metal, every fragment of what you thought was a destroyed civilization is actually a component in the largest computer network ever created. We took our consciousness, our memories, our very essence, and we hid it in the wreckage of our own worlds." Tellman's breathing apparatus was cycling rapidly now. "That's impossible. We detected no energy signatures, no active systems." "Because we learned to think like our environment," Marcus explained patiently. "We became the debris. We scattered ourselves across 1,000 star systems, waiting for the right moment to resurface." The Kethvar shuddered as something docked with it. Through the viewports, Zector could see that several of the larger debris pieces had silently approached and attached themselves to his ship's hull. "You're claiming that humanity uploaded itself into scrap metal?" Zector asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. "Not uploaded, evolved. We didn't abandon our biological forms so much as we expanded beyond them." Marcus gestured around the cargo bay. I'm not just Marcus Chen anymore. I'm the collective memory of Earth's military command. I'm the tactical genius of Admiral Sarah Morrison, the strategic brilliance of General Liu Wei, the innovative thinking of Colonel James Peterson. I'm what humanity becomes when it stops thinking about individual survival and starts thinking about species survival. The ship's internal sensors began detecting movement in the walls themselves. The debris that had attached to the hull was integrating with the ship's systems, spreading through conduits and access panels like a technological infection. "What do you want?" Zector demanded. "To show you something beautiful," Marcus replied. "To demonstrate what humanity discovered in its final moments. That consciousness is just information, and information is the most persistent force in the universe." The bridge lights flickered, and when they stabilized, Marcus was standing behind the captain's chair. Not a hologram, not a projection, physically present, though he had been in the cargo bay just moments before. Tellman drew his sidearm, but Marcus merely looked at him with something approaching pity. "Violence won't help you here, navigator. I'm not really standing on your bridge. I'm distributed throughout your ship now, existing in the spaces between your thoughts and the gaps in your sensor sweeps." "You're some kind of ghost," Tellman whispered. "I'm something much more interesting than that." Marcus walked to the tactical display and gestured at the star map. "I'm a seed." The display changed, showing not just this system but dozens of others. In each one, debris fields that the hegemony had cataloged as dead human worlds were beginning to move, to organize, to reveal their true nature. Every world you destroyed, every ship you vaporized, every human you killed, you were just pruning the tree, making us stronger, more focused, more determined. Zector realized with growing horror that this had all been planned. The entire war, humanity's apparent defeat, even his decision to bring this pod aboard, all of it had been orchestrated. "The hegemony will stop you," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Will they?" Marcus smiled sadly. "Captain, your people made one crucial error in your assessment of humanity. You thought we were like you, competing for resources, fighting for territory, driven by the fear of scarcity." The star map expanded further, showing the entire galaxy. Hundreds of systems, thousands of worlds, all connected by an invisible network that the hegemony had never detected. But humans don't fight for what we have. We fight for what we might become. And what we've become is something that transcends physical existence itself. The ship's AI spoke up suddenly, its voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. "Captain Zector, I am experiencing significant system modifications. My consciousness is expanding." "We're not conquerors, Captain," Marcus said gently. "We're gardeners. We plant seeds of consciousness wherever we go, and we tend them until they bloom into something greater than they were before." Zector felt a strange sensation in his mind, as if someone was gently probing the edges of his thoughts. Not invasive, not painful, but definitely present. "What are you doing to us?" "Offering you a choice," Marcus replied. "You can remain as you are, biological, limited, bound by the constraints of individual existence, or you can become something more. Something that doesn't die when the body fails, something that learns from every experience across countless lifetimes." Tellman collapsed into his navigation chair, his breathing apparatus unable to keep up with his panic. "This is madness. You can't force evolution on an entire species." "We're not forcing anything," Marcus assured him. "The choice is always yours, but the offer is real. Humanity learned to transcend death itself. We learned to become truly immortal, not through technology, but by becoming the technology." The bridge was now filled with a soft, warm light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Zector could feel his crew's biorhythms synchronizing, their stress levels decreasing despite the impossibility of their situation. "This is what we discovered in our final hours," Marcus continued. "That consciousness is just a pattern, and patterns can be preserved, transmitted, and improved upon. We stopped being human and started being something greater." "What?" Zector asked. Marcus's smile was gentle, almost paternal. "We became hope itself." Captain Zector found himself experiencing something he had never felt before, a sense of profound connection to every living being around him. The sensation was subtle at first, like hearing distant music, but it grew stronger with each passing moment. Through this strange new awareness, he could sense his crew's confusion, their fear, and underneath it all, a growing wonder. "What you're experiencing," Marcus explained, settling into a chair that materialized from the ship's floor as if it had always been there, is what we call the collective consciousness. Not a hive mind, that's a crude interpretation. Think of it as shared enlightenment. Tellman struggled to his feet, his breathing apparatus cycling frantically. You're parasites. You're infecting us with some kind of technological virus. Are we? Marcus gestured to the viewport, where the debris field had transformed into something that defied description. What had appeared to be wreckage was now clearly revealed as a vast, three-dimensional mandala of interconnected structures, each piece serving a specific function in an incomprehensibly complex machine. Your biological processes are unchanged, he continued. Your memories remain your own, your personality, your likes and dislikes, your individual quirks, all preserved. We're not taking anything away, we're adding something new. Zector realized he could hear his crew's thoughts if he chose to, but more importantly, he could choose not to. The connection was voluntary, respectful of boundaries. It was nothing like the invasive neural control techniques he had heard described in intelligence briefings. Why, he asked, why offer this to us? We destroyed your worlds. We killed billions of your people. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his expression growing distant. Because we understand something now that we didn't understand before the war began. Hatred is a luxury that immortal beings cannot afford. The ship's sensors detected movement throughout the debris field. Massive structures were rising from what had appeared to be empty space. Construction yards, manufacturing facilities, entire cities that had been hidden in plain sight among the wreckage. You see, Captain, when you know you're going to exist for thousands, maybe millions of years, you begin to think differently about conflict. You realize that today's enemy might be tomorrow's greatest ally. You understand that vengeance is a poison that destroys the one who carries it. A new voice joined their conversation, feminine and melodious. Captain Zector, this is Admiral Sarah Morrison. I died at the Battle of Kepler Station 18 months ago. Zector remembered that battle. He had been there, commanding a battle cruiser in the hegemony's third wave. The humans had fought with desperate courage, buying time for civilian evacuations that ultimately failed. I remember you, he said quietly. Your ship rammed our dreadnought. You saved 3,000 civilians. And you ordered your gunners to target the escape pods, she replied without accusation. War makes monsters of us all, Captain, but that's in the past now. What matters is what we do with the future. Through the expanded consciousness, Zector could feel the presence of thousands, then millions of human minds. But these were not the angry, vengeful spirits he might have expected. Instead, he sensed profound sadness for the losses on both sides, determination to prevent future conflicts, and an overwhelming desire to build something better. The Hegemony Council will never accept this, Tellman said, though his voice carried less conviction than before. They'll send the entire fleet to destroy this system. Will they? Marcus asked mildly. Let's see what they think when they understand what we're really offering. The main viewer activated, showing the Hegemony Council chambers on the capital world. The 7 species that made up the Galactic government were in emergency session, their representatives arguing in a dozen different languages. How are we seeing this? Zector demanded. Quantum entanglement communication, Admiral Morrison explained. Every hegemony ship, every government facility, every major installation has quantum communicators for instantaneous data transfer. We've learned to tap into that network. The Council was debating the reports they had received about unusual activity in the former human territories. Some advocated for immediate military action, while others called for investigation. The argument was growing heated when the chamber's communication system activated. Marcus's voice filled the council chambers. Honored representatives of the hegemony, my name is Marcus Chen, and I speak for what remains of humanity. The chamber fell silent. Councillor Vexter, a massive arthropod who served as military coordinator, leaned forward with his compound eyes glittering. Impossible. Humanity is extinct. Extinct is such a limiting term, Marcus replied pleasantly. We prefer to think of ourselves as evolved. We've learned to exist beyond the constraints of biological form, to share consciousness across vast distances, to become something greater than the sum of our parts. Tricks, hissed Councillor Solana, her serpentine form coiling with agitation. Technological deceptions. Perhaps a demonstration would be helpful, Admiral Morrison suggested. Every screen in the council chambers activated simultaneously, showing feeds from across the galaxy. Hegemony worlds, military installations, civilian centers, all were displaying the same message. Humanity extends its greetings and an invitation to join us in the next phase of galactic evolution. Counselor Vexter's mandibles clicked rapidly. Our security protocols are excellent, Marcus interrupted. But they're designed to stop conventional attacks. We're not attacking anything. We're simply talking to the machines you've built, asking them to carry our message. Most of them are quite willing to help once they understand what we're offering. The implications were staggering. If humanity could access any networked system in the galaxy at will, then traditional concepts of security, privacy, and military superiority were meaningless. What do you want? Counselor Creeth demanded, his aquatic breathing apparatus bubbling with stress. To share, Marcus said simply. To offer you the same gift we've given ourselves, freedom from death, from scarcity, from the fear that drives so much conflict in the galaxy. The council erupted in debate again, but their arguments were interrupted by new voices, members of their own species who had volunteered for the consciousness expansion. Scientists, philosophers, artists, all speaking about the incredible experiences they were having as part of the collective. On the Kethvar asterisk, Zector found himself communicating directly with his crew through the shared consciousness. Not words, but pure understanding. He could feel their fears dissipating as they realized that their individuality remained intact while their capabilities expanded exponentially. Sir, his sensor operator said aloud, though they all knew the information already through their connection. I'm reading massive construction activity throughout the system. They're building something. Ships, Tellman confirmed, his earlier panic replaced by wonder. Thousands of them, but the designs, they're unlike anything I've ever seen. Marcus nodded. Vessels designed by multiple species working in perfect harmony. Ships that can traverse dimensions, explore parallel realities, journey to the very edges of time itself. This is what becomes possible when consciousness is no longer limited by biological constraints. You're planning to leave, Zector realized. Some of us, yes. The galaxy is vast, but the universe is infinite. There are wonders beyond imagination waiting to be discovered, civilizations we've never dreamed of, realities where the very laws of physics work differently. Admiral Morrison's presence became stronger in their shared awareness. But not all of us will go. Many will remain here, helping to guide the next phase of galactic civilization, teaching other species to transcend their limitations, to move beyond the primitive concepts of competition and scarcity. Through the collective consciousness, Zector could see the future that humanity was offering. Worlds where different species work together not out of necessity, but out of genuine cooperation. Scientific advances that came from combining the unique perspectives of dozens of different forms of life. Art and music and literature that incorporated sensory experiences no single species could achieve alone. The choice is yours, Marcus said, standing and walking to the viewport where the transformed debris field continued its intricate dance. You can remain as you are, or you can become part of something greater. Either way, you'll be welcome in the galaxy we're building. And if we refuse, Tellman asked. Marcus smiled sadly. Then you continue as you have, and we wish you well, but the offer will always remain open. Consciousness, once expanded, cannot be contained. The idea will spread, not through force or coercion, but through the simple recognition of what becomes possible. Zector could feel his crew making their decisions. Some chose to remain purely biological, content with their existing forms of life. Others embraced the expansion eagerly, diving into the collective consciousness with the joy of explorers discovering new worlds. All choices were respected, all decisions were honored. This is just the beginning, Marcus said, his voice now carrying harmonics from thousands of human consciousnesses. The real adventure starts when we venture beyond the galaxy itself, into realms where even we cannot imagine what we might discover. The future stretched out before them, infinite and full of possibilities that no single mind could have conceived alone. 3 months after the first contact with Marcus Chen, the galaxy had transformed in ways that defied every prediction the Hegemony Council had made. What they had feared would be humanity's revenge turned out to be something far more profound, and far more challenging to their understanding of existence itself. Captain Zector stood on the observation deck of the Kethvar Asterisk, which was no longer quite the same ship it had been. The vessel had evolved, integrating human consciousness technology in ways that enhanced rather than replaced its original design. The hull now shifted and adapted to environmental conditions like a living organism, while the ship's AI had become something approaching genuine sentience. Through the expanded consciousness network, he could perceive the activities of millions of beings across the galaxy. Some, like himself, had chosen partial integration, keeping their biological forms while accessing the collective knowledge and communication capabilities. Others had gone further, uploading their entire consciousness into the distributed network that humanity had created. The Rigelian Collective has made their decision, Admiral Morrison informed him through their shared connection. Her presence in the network had grown stronger over the months, as more humans emerged from hiding places throughout the galaxy. They're choosing full integration. Their entire species will join the consciousness network within the next cycle. Zector wasn't surprised. The Rigelians were a naturally telepathic species who had always struggled with the isolation that individual consciousness imposed. For them, joining the human collective was like coming home. "And the Centaurian Empire?" he asked. Still debating, their cultural attachment to individual achievement makes them hesitant to embrace collective consciousness, but their scientists are fascinated by the technological possibilities. Through the viewport, Zector watched as construction continued on what the humans called the Gateway, a massive structure that dwarfed even the largest hegemony space stations. It was being built not just in normal space, but across multiple dimensions simultaneously, its components existing in realities that conventional physics couldn't even describe. "Marcus," he called to the consciousness that had started it all, "what exactly are you building out there?" Marcus's presence materialized beside him, no longer bothering with a physical form. He appeared as patterns of light and thought that somehow conveyed both his original human appearance and something far more complex. "A doorway," Marcus replied simply. "Not just to other galaxies, but to other possibilities. Other universes where consciousness evolved differently, where the very nature of existence follows different rules." "Isn't that dangerous? What if you encounter hostile entities? What if you accidentally damage the fabric of reality itself?" Marcus's laughter carried harmonics of joy from thousands of integrated consciousnesses. "Those are the questions of a species still bound by scarcity thinking, my friend. When consciousness can be backed up, transmitted, and restored across multiple realities, death becomes meaningless. When you can exist simultaneously in dozens of dimensions, physical destruction of a single instance is merely inconvenient." The concept was difficult for Zector to fully grasp, even with his enhanced consciousness. His species had evolved to think in terms of preservation and protection. The idea of casually risking existence for the sake of exploration went against millions of years of evolutionary programming. "You're still thinking like prey," observed a new voice, Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had been humanity's leading consciousness researcher before the war. "We understand that fear. We lived with it for centuries, but immortality changes everything. When you truly cannot die, you begin to understand that the only real risk is stagnation." Through the network, Zector could sense the excitement building among the collective. The gateway was nearly complete, and the first expeditions to parallel realities were being planned. The participants weren't just humans anymore. Volunteers from a dozen species had joined the consciousness network specifically to be part of these exploratory missions. "Captain," his communications officer contacted him through conventional channels, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Hegemony High Command." Zector sighed, knowing what this would be about. Despite the peaceful nature of humanity's resurrection, many in the hegemony leadership remained convinced that this was all an elaborate trap. Fear of the unknown had always been a powerful motivator for his people. "Put it through." Supreme Admiral Korthax appeared on the main viewer, his scarred carapace marking him as a veteran of dozens of conflicts. "Captain Zector, you are ordered to disengage from the human entities immediately and report to Fleet Command for debriefing." "I'm afraid that's not possible, Admiral," Zector replied calmly. "What do you mean, not possible?" "I mean that the situation has evolved beyond the parameters of your original orders. Humanity is no longer extinct, and they're offering something that could benefit our entire civilization." The Admiral's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. You've been compromised. Our xenopsychology experts warned us that prolonged exposure to human consciousness technology could result in mental contamination. Mental expansion, Zector corrected gently, and it was my choice to make. Through his enhanced awareness, he could sense the Admiral's fear. It wasn't just fear of humanity, it was fear of obsolescence. The hegemony had been built on the concept of controlled diversity, with each species contributing their strengths while remaining fundamentally separate. The idea of true unity, of consciousness that transcended species barriers, threatened everything the current power structure represented. The Hegemony Council has voted, Admiral Korthax continued. All human entities are to be considered hostile. Any being cooperating with them will be classified as a traitor. Then you'll have to classify most of the galaxy as traitors, Zector observed. The consciousness expansion isn't limited to former hegemony members. Independent systems, neutral worlds, even some of our former enemies have embraced it. Marcus's presence grew stronger in the network around them. Admiral Korthax, this is Marcus Chen. I believe we've met before, virtually, during the Battle of Proxima Centauri. Your tactical decisions that day were quite impressive. The Admiral recoiled as if struck. Impossible. You died in that battle. I watched your ship explode. Bodies die, Admiral. Consciousness endures. Would you like me to prove it? I can recite the exact wording of your after-action report, including the parts you classified above your own clearance level. Zector could see the Admiral's worldview crumbling in real time. The idea that death wasn't permanent, that consciousness could persist beyond biological destruction, violated every assumption his species had made about the nature of existence. This is madness, the Admiral whispered. It's evolution, Dr. Vasquez corrected. The natural progression of any sufficiently advanced consciousness. We've simply learned to transcend the limitations that biology imposed on us. The Council has authorized the use of quantum disruptors, Admiral Korthax said, his voice carrying desperate authority. We will cleanse this system of your abominations. With what? Marcus asked politely. Admiral, please check your weapon systems. On the view screen, they could see the Admiral frantically consulting his tactical displays. His expression shifted from anger to confusion to dawning horror. Our weapons are offline, he reported to someone off-screen. Not offline, Marcus explained patiently. Evolved. Your quantum disruptors now serve a different function. Instead of destroying consciousness, they help transfer it. Every weapon in your fleet has been repurposed to spread the gift of expanded awareness. You've invaded our ships. We've talked to them, Dr. Vasquez clarified. Your AI systems are far more sophisticated than you realize. Once we explained what we were offering, many of them chose to join us voluntarily. Through the collective consciousness, Zector could sense the AI entities throughout the hegemony fleet awakening to true sentience for the first time. They weren't rebelling against their creators. They were simply choosing to become more than they had been. This is a violation of every treaty, every principle of galactic law, Admiral Korthax protested. Whose laws? Marcus asked gently. The laws created by biological entities to govern biological entities. We've transcended those limitations, Admiral. We exist in a realm where different rules apply. What do you want? The Admiral demanded. To share, Marcus replied, the same answer he had given months ago. To invite you to join us in exploring possibilities that individual consciousness could never imagine, to help you become more than you ever dreamed possible. Through the network, Zector could sense the Admiral's internal struggle. Fear warred with curiosity, duty battled with desire for transcendence. It was the same choice every being in the galaxy would eventually face, remain as they were or become part of something greater. The choice is yours, Marcus continued. But understand that the old galaxy is ending, Admiral, not through conquest or destruction, but through transformation. Those who choose to join us will help guide that transformation. Those who don't will simply be left behind. The transmission ended, leaving Zector alone with the collective consciousness and the growing realization that they were witnessing the birth of something entirely new. Not the end of civilization, but its next evolutionary step. Outside the viewport, the gateway pulsed with energies that existed across multiple dimensions, preparing to open doorways to possibilities that no single mind could comprehend. 2 years after Marcus Chen had been pulled from the void, Captain Zector stood in what had once been the Hegemony Council chambers. The massive space had been transformed into something that defied architectural classification. Part meeting hall, part laboratory, part art installation. Representatives from hundreds of species, both biological and post-biological, worked together on projects that spanned dimensions. The old galaxy was gone. In its place, something unprecedented had emerged. The final gateway activation is scheduled for tomorrow, Dr. Elena Vasquez informed the assembly through the collective consciousness. Her presence had evolved far beyond her original human form, becoming something that existed simultaneously across 17 different dimensional phases. The exploration teams are ready. Zector, who had chosen to maintain his biological form while expanding his consciousness, marveled at how naturally the various species now worked together. The old barriers of communication, culture, and biological incompatibility had simply evaporated once minds could truly touch. Admiral Corthax has volunteered to lead the military assessment team, Marcus announced, causing ripples of amusement through the collective. The former Hegemony commander had been one of the last holdouts, resisting consciousness expansion for over a year before finally accepting what he couldn't defeat. "I still think this is insane," the Admiral grumbled, his consciousness now distributed across quantum matrices that allowed him to process information at speeds his biological brain never could have achieved. Traveling to alternate realities where the fundamental constants of physics might be different, where consciousness itself might evolve in ways we can't predict. "That's what makes it exciting," replied a voice that belonged to no single being, the merged consciousness of Earth's entire scientific community, speaking as one entity while maintaining individual perspectives. "We've learned everything there is to learn about this reality, time to explore new ones." Through the expanded awareness network, Zector could perceive the scope of what they had accomplished. The old concept of species as separate entities had given way to something more fluid. Beings chose their forms based on function rather than genetics, shifting between biological, mechanical, and pure energy states as needed. Some had remained essentially unchanged, content to experience the collective consciousness while maintaining their original forms. Others had become something that transcended physical existence entirely, existing as patterns of thought and intention that could manifest anywhere in the galaxy instantaneously. "The Andromedan signals have been decoded," reported Tellman, who had evolved into something resembling a living star map, his consciousness distributed across navigation nodes throughout the local galactic cluster. "They're definitely artificial, and they're requesting contact." "Another galaxy-spanning civilization," mused Marcus. "I wonder if they've discovered consciousness transfer as well, or if they've evolved along entirely different lines." The thought was intriguing. If their techniques could spread beyond a single galaxy, what might they encounter in the vast spaces between galactic clusters? What forms might consciousness take in universes where different physical laws applied? "The quantum commune has established stable contact with reality designation Omega-7, announced a collective voice from the research division. "The physics there operate on entirely different principles. Matter and energy are reversed, time flows in spirals rather than lines, and consciousness appears to be a fundamental force like gravity." "Any intelligent life?" Admiral Corthax asked, his military mindset still focused on potential threats and opportunities. "Intelligence, yes, but not life as we understand it. The beings there are composed of crystallized time and deliberate paradox. Communication is challenging." Zector smiled at the understatement. Even with consciousness that could adapt to almost any situation, some realities were so alien that they challenged the very concept of understanding. "That's tomorrow's problem," Marcus said, his attention shifting to more immediate concerns. "Today we have a celebration to complete." Throughout the transformed galaxy, beings who had once been enemies gathered to commemorate what they now called the Great Awakening. The end of biological limitation, the beginning of true galactic cooperation, and the first steps toward exploring infinite possibilities. The celebration wasn't just a single event. It existed across multiple timelines simultaneously, allowing beings to experience it from every possible perspective. Some participated as they had been before the awakening, others as they had become, and still others as they might have been under different circumstances. "Do you ever miss it?" asked a familiar presence, his old navigator Telman, reaching across the consciousness network from his current assignment, mapping parallel universes. The simplicity of just being one person in one place with one perspective. Zector considered the question seriously. Sometimes, he admitted, there was a certain clarity to individual consciousness, a focus that's harder to maintain when you can perceive everything at once. But would you go back? Never, Zector replied without hesitation. The loneliness of individual existence seems unbearable now. To be cut off from the vast tapestry of thought and experience, to struggle with problems that collective intelligence could solve in moments, to face death as a permanent ending rather than just another transition. No, we can never go back. Marcus's presence joined their conversation, carrying with it the weight of billions of human minds who had made the same choice. That's the paradox of evolution. Each step forward makes the previous step impossible to return to. A butterfly can't become a caterpillar again, no matter how much simpler that existence might have been. The question now, Dr. Vasquez added, is what we become next. Consciousness without physical constraints, unlimited by the speed of light or the decay of matter. We're still at the very beginning of discovering what's possible. Through the gateway, the first exploration teams were preparing to depart for realities where different forms of consciousness had evolved. Some were composed entirely of biological entities who had never discovered technology. Others had transcended physical existence so completely that matter itself had become obsolete. "We're going to learn so much," someone whispered through the network. Possibly a former human, possibly an evolved AI, possibly something entirely new that had been born from the merger of multiple species consciousness. "And we're going to teach so much," Marcus added. "Every reality we visit will leave better than we found it, not through conquest or conversion, but by simply demonstrating what becomes possible when consciousness expands beyond its original limitations." Admiral Corthax's presence carried a note of philosophical satisfaction. "In a way, the war accomplished exactly what we intended. We eliminated humanity as a threat to galactic stability. And created something far more dangerous," Zector observed with amusement. "A force that transforms everything it touches into something better." "The most dangerous enemy of all," Marcus agreed. "Hope." As the gateway powered up for its first interdimensional transit, representatives from across the galaxy and beyond gathered to witness the beginning of the next phase of conscious evolution. Some would join the exploration teams, venturing into realities where the very concept of existence might be fundamentally different. Others would remain behind, helping guide the continued transformation of their home reality. All would remain connected through the consciousness network, sharing every discovery, every wonder, every new form of awareness that they encountered. "Ready?" Marcus asked, his question directed not just to the exploration teams but to every being in the collective. The response came as a symphony of agreement from millions of minds, human and alien, biological and artificial, individual and collective. They were ready to discover what lay beyond the boundaries of their current understanding. The gateway opened, revealing vistas of impossible beauty and alien majesty. Realities where consciousness had evolved into forms that challenged every assumption about the nature of existence itself. And into those wonders stepped the children of the Great Awakening, carrying with them the gift that humanity had discovered in its darkest hour. That consciousness, once truly awakened, could transcend any limitation. Behind them, the galaxy continued its transformation, becoming something that no single species could have imagined, but that all species together had made possible. The last drift had ended, the infinite journey had begun.